Welcome to the Church Brain Guide podcast. My name is Michael. In today's episode, we are jumping right into this big idea of using videos. What we found is that churches just don't understand how to create videos that are grabbing people's attention. So we want to help you solve that problem today. I'm on with Dennis. Dennis is back to help us with a lot of value. Hey, Dennis, how's it going?
I am doing well, Michael. I'm glad to be back. I'm like that. I'm like that guest that never leaves.
We just keep going. It's been so good.
That's right.
The podcast is really designed to help you do a few things. Well, first, we want to help you cut through the noise so that you reach the people that you're pursuing in your city. We also want to help you to connect with those people so that you're able to see more lives transformed and more people joining your church. So in this episode, we're talking about video and how to use it properly so that you're able to get people's attention to then be able to engage with them and help them and to help them take next steps with your church. So with all that being said, hey Dennis, so with video, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with video?
Yeah, with video, the first kind of taste with video in the church space specifically, right, is when at my previous church plant, when we were launching, we were running these ads, right? And one of the things that we did very well is during all of our pop-up services, we captured great videos, and we turned it into basically like a recap. And we put some music. We made it very cinematic. And every time we ran those ads, we noticed how much video really helps capture attention. I think I said this before on one episode. In the first growth tracks or next steps kind of class that we had on launch Sunday, we had 20 people raise their hands, said that they found us through social media. And really, when they found us through social media, they weren't following us before, but we were running those ads with those really engaging videos. So what we really see with video, it's really an opportunity to tell stories. It's really an opportunity to show people what the Sunday experience could look like. And I know you have some experience, even from working together, on how you help ministries essentially tell their story better.
Yeah, I did video for a while. I was part of a mega church that had a ministry on like a television type ministry. So I got introduced to video through television. And then I remember coming up this is like in the early 2000s, and we had a studio and we would create these promotional videos for things that were coming up. And we'd also shoot testimonial videos to help the church understand, like, hey, how's God working through our church, that type of thing. So I really developed a love for video and editing. And really, what I found out is that it's not a love for video, but it's a love for storytelling. Like that's like you use the equipment you need to use, you use the techniques you need to use, you use the whatever spaces or facilities, or maybe you go
Mhm.
travel somewhere. Ultimately you're doing it to tell a great story, and great stories are engaging. So in everything that you do with video, you get to tell a great narrative, a great story. So even in our as right now we're recording this episode, what I've learned is that you have to be intentional about this. Like, you can't just show up with the camera and be like, hey, what are we going to do today?
Mhm.
You have to be intentional about what is the goal, what's the objective that you're trying to achieve with this content, and then be sure you do that. And like for our simple format in our just recording this episode is basically, hey, what is the problem that we want to help people solve today?
That's right.
And then from that, we then develop the content. So I guess, Dennis, when it comes to producing video, you have to be intentional. Like, what does that look like? What's that mindset look like?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail. I think it's first realizing what is the pain point, right? I have this framework that I've worked through with a lot of the organizations that I work with. I actually call it the movement framework, right? It's how do we confront conflict? How do we cultivate connections? How do we create a community? And how do we communicate our story, right? And really, so confronting conflict, usually the best videos, even movies, or when you look at movie trailers, you can pretty see you can see the conflict pretty quick. You can see the pain point. Maybe if it's an Instagram video that you're recording or an Instagram reel, you communicate a felt need. One of the strategies that I've used with churches, especially when running ads, is the first thing that the pastor or the communicator would say is a problem or a felt need. So have you been feeling like this? Are you doing this? Are you in this stage of life? So it's addressing a pain point, confronting conflict. And then the next thing that I think a good video does, it cultivates a connection. Two types of connections you want to make. You want to make a connection with someone, but then you also want to make a connection for someone, right? So when you're in the video, you want to relate. So how do you make a connection with someone, right? You want to use language that they understand. You don't want to use all of this jargon that might not be in their context. So you want to use simple language that they can understand. And then you want to point them to something that they can make a connection with. So have you been feeling like this? Here's what the Bible says about this, right? And maybe you don't know much about the Bible. Hey, I want to invite you to this group that we have coming up on this day, right? So we confronted a conflict. We stated the pain point. We made a connection with them, but then we made a connection for them, right? And then what happens when we do that, is then we see that we're fostering community. And then the last thing that I said is, okay, then we communicate the story, right? And in my kind of ad framework, that's when I would tell the pastor to introduce himself, right? So let's say, for example, hey, have you been feeling like you're full with anxiety? Have you been feeling a little depressed lately? Well, here's what the Bible says about this. There was actually a prophet that prophet was a little depressed. Hey, my name is Pastor Dennis. I am the pastor of this church. I remember a time in my life when I felt anxious, when I felt depressed. Right. So again, so that framework, that movement framework is how do you take people from where they are and connect them to where they want to be? And kind of like what you were saying, Michael, to approach a video in this manner, it really takes a lot of intentionality. It really takes knowing who are you communicating to, right? And when you think of video in this way, when you approach video in this way, that's how you can ensure that you're making a true connection with somebody. Most ministries, when they come in a video like this. Hey, my name is Pastor Dennis, and I am from Oceanside Church. No one cares about who you are, right? They care. They really in a video, especially if it's an ad, you're disrupting whatever they're doing. So they don't care about who you are. If you want to get their attention within that first 3 seconds, if you want to stop the scroll, what us marketers say, then you want to communicate a felt need. You want to communicate a pain point and make a connection for them. Then that's when you will capture their attention and ultimately point that attention back to Jesus.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So I'm typically doing long form video,
Mhm.
whereas you do a lot of video that's short, punchy, social media type stuff. So long form, just to maybe give you another perspective of it, long form videos like where you're really unpacking a story. So some of the videos that I've produced in the past for like a church service has been like a testimonial video where you're telling somebody's story, like backstory and all this stuff. One of the greatest things that I've experienced in church world is watching one of my videos get played that we worked so hard on and produced, and basically we're just highlighting God through somebody's story. And I love watching the audience and then seeing if they laughed when they were supposed to laugh or if they cried. And man, I tell you what, if I feel kind of strange, but if I see people like crying, like I'm like, yes, yes. I'm the guy cheering in the corner as everybody else is wiping tears from their eyes.
uh,
But it just means that we've done a good job. And so
that's
one of the
right.
things I'd encourage you to do is just be a student, like be a student of like how to tell better stories. There's a bunch of resources that are available on YouTube that helps you just to learn a formula to tell stories. There's actually a long formula that people use to tell stories, but we simplified it at our church. Um, Typically, you're not going to have a lot of time to tell a story.
That's right.
So we shoot for like 2 minutes. Hey, can you tell a great story that engages with people to the point of like tears, even if that's the case, within 2 minutes. So we created this formula. It's basically what is the struggle that they had. So the part one, there's three parts to it. What's the struggle? What's the what's the God moment? No, that's part two. What's the God moment? How did you encounter Jesus or God, or what did that look like? And then part three, now what are the results that you're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
So struggle, God moment, results. And we've basically said, hey, if you can ahead of time give me 130 words, like just write it down, like describe your struggle in 130 words, describe your God moment in 130, and describe your results. Now, how is life different, basically, in 130? Then basically what we'll do is shoot that video. They don't have to read off the script, but they can just kind of go through that formula, that flow in their
Mm-hmm.
head, and it keeps it within about 2 minutes. And then
That's
our
great.
edits aren't super crazy because we don't have to go dig through a lot of stuff, and then we can produce more stories. And we just feel that stories are at our at Vibrant Church, that's the win. How many stories can we tell? We just want to tell a lot of stories, because the thing about a story is that it's not a sermon or a message that you're trying to convey to somebody. You're just allowing God to use whatever He wants to use within that story to connect with somebody in some way,
Right.
and you never know what that is. So we again, just last thought to maybe help you out is that I actually created a landing page on our Vibrant Church website, and it has the three parts on it. So typically what I'll do is I had a great conversation this past week. This lady named Terry started coming to our church, and she's telling me all these great things that are happening in her life. I was like, hey, would you be willing to tell your story this week? And she's like, yes. And then, so what I've done is I have a link to a page where I have the formula, and then I have a whole bunch of words like that
Mm-hmm.
describe the struggle. Like there's a list of like 50 words that describe what your struggle might be. And then I have a list of like, maybe there's like 10 words or so that might be like a God moment, how you might describe that. And then I have another 50 words that might be like how you might describe life now, that God has kind of done some amazing things. And so I'm just providing that resource. And then I have a short video that I created at the top of that page that explains the formula and how to do it. And hey, 130 words, that type of thing. And so now I just send her that link, and she has what she needs to then be able to put together her story. And then we schedule a date so that we can shoot it at church, before service or something like that. Anyway, I've kind of shared a lot there, but Dennis, any thoughts on that?
I would say it's exactly what you touched on. It's on, you have to plan, right? You can't just go into it willy nilly. Even with my short form content, if we're doing short form content for a few months out, there has to be some type of planning involved. Uh, Also some strategy to understand, like, hey, who do I want to reach, right? And once you pick who you want to reach, you want to identify what are they dealing with, or what's the pain point I want to communicate. Like you said, what's that God moment? I really like that language. What's that God moment, and then what's the result, right? And again, I think both with long form and short form. Short form, all you're doing is doing that same thing, but you're just making it a whole lot shorter. So maybe it's a sentence for each, right? And a call to action at the end. But again, I think with video, all another one last thing I'll say is that what people have to understand is all social media platforms right now are all transitioning to video. Even a platform like Instagram, they're transitioning completely to video for the most part. They're not going to wipe away photos, but for example, like Instagram has came out and said, "Hey, we are no longer a photo posting platform." Right? Everything is transitioning into videos. I really believe that the future of websites are gonna really become video hubs. And even with a lot of platforms that we see, online streaming platforms, they have become subscription based, right? So video is going to continue to make its way into our society, into the way that we use media. So it would be worthwhile for your ministry to invest into video. And maybe you don't have all the big camera gear or the microphone. Start with an iPhone, right? And don't focus on the production value yet, because you can always go and buy that. But focus on structuring a good story. And whether you're shooting it at 1080p or you're shooting it at 4K, As long as you're creating something that connects with somebody, that's all that matters.
So good. I mean, I love that. Yeah, don't focus on the equipment. Just focus on the story, getting really good stories, and being good at that. And also the formula that Dennis shared. In fact, Dennis, can you just very quickly, I know in our notes before this, you had like 4 steps for putting together like a great social media. Can you just hit those 4 steps real quick before we close it out?
Yeah, let me read them out. So, in terms of creating a engaging video, correct?
Yes.
Right? So the first one, again, it's just be intentional, right? Intentionality is very important. And when we're intentional, that's when we can really do what the best job to really connect with people. The second thing is, don't put a big focus on production value. Focus on really telling the story. The third thing is, again, and this is still in line with the be intentional, but it's really knowing what is your end goal, right? So in that end goal, that should be the call to action. So every video should have some type of call to action in some way. It doesn't have to be a direct call to action in your face. But like, for example, I do short form videos on social media. So a simple call to action on social media is like and follow for more, right? At the end of every video. That's very important. And then four, knowing the duration for that platform is very important, right? So, for example, if it's something in service, kind of like you said, you don't want to go past 2 minutes because you don't want to lose people's attention. For me, if it's something like social media or Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels, I try not to go past 15 seconds, right? 15 to 30 seconds is really that sweet spot. And all of these kind of points are really just, again, to help capture attention and point it to Jesus.
So in our show notes for this episode, we're going to put these notes in there so that you can go reference that. Just go to churchbrainguide.com and you'll find the show notes for this episode where you can get that. I'll also leave a link to the page I created for my church, so you can see that formula that we use at our church to tell those 2 minute testimonial video to create those videos. A lot of my clients too, what I'll do is I'll actually create a copy of that and put it onto their website that we build out for them, so they have a resource and they can do the same thing with their church people that are wanting to tell their stories. Dennis, you also have a great company that you started that can help churches to tell stories, right? Why don't you share a little bit about your company and what you do for churches?
Yeah, one of the things that we do for churches, it first starts off on the strategy end as well. Just really working and talking you through with what you could do to give you a larger vision for why we do the things that we do. And then the next thing is we have an unlimited design and video subscription where we work with ministries to really help them just cut those videos up, honestly, because maybe you're the only person in your church that, if you were like me a couple of years ago, you were taking photos, you were taking videos, you were posting, you were doing the website, you were doing 100 things. So this is just another kind of thing that we created just to help ministries out. It's a low cost monthly subscription where basically you make a request for those videos, and really our turnaround time for those videos are 3 days. Whereas design, we can do same day or 24-hour turnarounds. And we're pretty easy to find. We're just hallelujahsocial.com. Or you can just email me personally at Dennis, DENIS, at hallelujahsocial.com.
So we're here to help you win as a church. The thing I think about is how could I starting out win faster? And then we've built the Church Brand Guide, where I help churches to create brands, and we also do this podcast to help myself when I was like 22 years old, just starting off in church world and communications, to go further, faster. And Dennis, you've got a great company to help people as well that are in that boat. So if you're a communications person at your church, take full advantage of these episodes and the outlines that we have. Again, go to churchbrandguide.com to be able to see the show notes and get a replay of this episode. But also take advantage of Hallelujah Social, or reach out to Church Brand Guide and see if I can help you maybe create your brand for your church websites, those type of things. We'd love to be a resource to help you go further, faster. We'd love for you to leave a review as well on this episode. It helps us to be found by more people. And also just subscribe if you haven't done that already. Hey, thanks again for joining us on this episode. Thanks, Dennis, for sharing your amazing knowledge on us. And we will see you on the next episode.